الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وقدوتنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Respected brothers and sisters in Islam, firstly thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala once again. Allah has granted us the tawfiq and the ability to have performed our Maghrieb Salaah wal Jama'ah, alhamdulillah. We make dua Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our Salah wal Jama'ah, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us sincerity and istiqamah. Ameen Rabbil Alameen. My beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, last week we have discussed and we have started the tafsir of Surah At-Teen, Wat-Teen wa Zaytoon, and we have mentioned, we have started off the four oaths which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes in the initial two verses of the surah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath with the fig and with the olive and Mount Sinai, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath with the Balad al-Amin, which refers to Makkah al-Mukarramah. And this evening we start with ayah number 4 and number 5. Beautiful ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, us, the human beings, mankind. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts with بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we have certainly created man in the best stature. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding me and you this creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala amongst the many creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, amongst the millions of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that indeed I have created insan, mankind. Allah says I have created them in the best and most beautiful forms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Man is the most beautiful of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as the ulama mentioned, what makes us the best of the creation of Allah and what makes us such special creatures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us, number one, Allah has granted us the ability and Allah has granted us knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, compared to other creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, compared to the animal kingdom, compared to the plant kingdom, this creation, mankind, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this brains, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this knowledge to go with it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us power and authority in this dunya. Allah has made every other creature subservient to that of mankind. Every other creature Allah has made subservient to us. Allah has granted us this power, this authority. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us the ability of communication, the ability of speech, where we can communicate with one another. So Allah has given us the ability of speech. Allah has given us the ability of hearing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the ability of planning. We find today that how mankind, through the knowledge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us and allowed us to gain, how mankind, how they moving forward in terms of technology and all of these type of things. The machinery mankind is able to create and to design. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us that ability. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us wisdom. And as Mufassirul mentioned it, all of these are in fact qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ خَلَقَ آدَمَ عَلَى صُورَتِهِ, that indeed verily Allah has created Adam in his image. Not meaning not looking like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the qualities Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of Allah's qualities, Allah has placed it in insan. And that in itself is an honor which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us, this creation, mankind. So hadith of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioning and speaking about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us all of these qualities compared to the rest of the creation of Allah. And then the next interesting slide, if you look at the beautiful full moon, Imam al-Qurtubi rahimahullah He brings under this ayah, and he brings a story of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created insan in the most beautiful way. As you look, you see in the text next to it, that mother on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? If we were to look at the beautiful moon outside the full moon, and we were to compare our beauty with the full moon, who do we think is more beautiful? So Imam al-Qurtubi rahimahullah brings a beautiful narration, a wonderful story of the human beauty. It is mentioned that Isa ibn Musa Hashimi, he was the high-ranking officer in the royal court of the Caliph, of the Khalifa Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. And this officer, he loved his wife very much. He was very in love with his wife. And it is mentioned that one day him and his wife, they were sitting and they were staring at the beauty of the full moon. They were staring at the beauty of the full moon. And this person, he exclaimed and he says, أنت طالق ثلاثا أن لم تكوني أحسن من القمر. He shouts out that you are divorced 3 times if you are not more beautiful than the qamar, than the full moon. And immediately when his wife hears this, she goes into seclusion, because she understood that the words of talaq, whether you say it jokingly, it falls. So here my husband is saying 3 times you are talaq, if you are not more beautiful than the full moon. And she's thinking to herself, how can I be more beautiful than the full moon? So definitely the talaqs will fall. And she goes into seclusion and because now she's like a stranger to him. And he goes to the Qadi and he expresses his regret that the words that he has uttered and the seriousness of these words. And the Qadi gathered the ulama and he discusses this matter, this talaq, and he asks them, is this talaq really valid? And all of them, as the ulama, they are sitting and they're discussing and they say, no, that verily the talaq has fallen. You have divorced your wife. And not only once, he gave all 3 talaqs. And then one of the students of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah was present. It is mentioned that he was quiet. And so the Qadi, he asked that, what is on your mind? What do you have to, what is your input in regarding this matter? And after the silence, he recited the verse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لَقَدْ خَلَقَنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. That Allah has created man in the most beautiful of forms. There's none of the creation more beautiful than the creation of insan. And because of this verse, the talaq is not valid. And when he presents his case to the ulama in the present, all of them agree that this is the haqq he's speaking. All of them agree that this is the reality he's speaking. Allah has created us in the best of forms. The way Allah has placed our eyes, the way Allah has fashioned, the way Allah has placed every limb, the way Allah has made us flexible, the way we walk in this dunya compared to the animals, the way we are structured. Everything Allah has created beautifully. So we are the best of the creation, the most beautiful of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even the most beautiful and full moon doesn't even compare to our beauty according to this narration. And then he went back to his wife and he said, my wife, you're not talaq. This is the verdict and this is that the ulama has mentioned. You can imagine the happiness after that. The seriousness of giving talaq to your wife, and with the good news that the ulama has decided, all of them have decided that the talaq is not valid based on this verse of the Quran, Surah Al-Teen. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah, in ayah number 5, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after reminding us, and after telling us that how beautiful we and you are created, and how we are the cream of the crop, as they say, and we are the most beautiful of the creation of Allah, Allah also brings us back to reality. Almost like Allah's bursting that bubble. Before you get a big head, Allah is telling you, ثُمَّ رَدَدَنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. ثُمَّ رَدَدَنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. Then we return him to the lowest of the low. So after Allah has given us that strength, and Allah has given us, and here the ulama speak about more the physical part of it, the bodily side of it. Like how Allah has created us in this youth, in our prime, we are energetic, we are alive, we are powerful, we have the energy to do things. We move around easily. Allah says, ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. There will come a time that you will become the lowest of the low. And the ulama mentioned it even, when the animals and the horses become old. A racing horse, when it becomes old, it becomes old, but it's still of benefit. It can be used as transportation to carry luggage and used for other, even if he die, even if the old cow, whatever die, we can still use his skin. It can be still of a benefit. Some ulama mentioned that when insan, when we become old, from that, from being independent, we become dependent on others. We become dependent on others. Again, returning to that state of weakness. Becoming the lowest of the low, says the ulama. And this is a lesson for us, my beloved brothers, sisters in Islam. This is the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the system that one day we are there and one day we are on top and one day we are the best of the creation of Allah. But remind ourselves, Allah is reminding us that ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ, that there will come a time when you become the lowest of the low as well. In our stages of our lives and how we carry on and how our bodies will weaken again, how the eyesight will weaken, how everything will become weak again. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ulama has mentioned, also some has highlighted the point of not only losing our beauty, our strength and independence, but also this, some have interpreted both physical and spiritual. Sometimes a person can become spiritual. If a person is on a spiritual high, he can be better than that of the malaika. He can be better than that of the malaika, but spiritually he is corrupt. And on the spiritual low, he can be worse than the animals itself. When we break the laws of Allah, when we don't pay heed to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we only follow our shahawat, our desires, we do what we want in this dunya, as if there's no creator, as if there's no hisab, as if there's no qiyamah that we're going to be reckoned on the day of qiyamah, there's no questioning for us. When the person lives like this, the ulama is mentioned, balhum adal, they're like worse than the animals. So physically we can get that stage, at that stage where we're the lowest of the low, and spiritually as well. We can reach a stage lower than that of the animals itself. And then, as I've mentioned, we can reach the stage better than the malaika, or we can reach a stage lower than that of the animals in terms of our spirituality. And the lesson we take from this two ayat, my beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, is remembering the status Allah has given mankind. Allah has created us to be from amongst the best of the creation of Allah. And being from amongst the best of the creation of Allah, we need to act accordingly. We need to use our intellect. We need to seek the knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created and given to the prophets and the Quran and the Sunnah. Use this knowledge to beautify us further. Walk this dunya like we are the best of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We cannot, Allah is telling us we're the best of the creation. Imagine if we act contrary, we want to act worse than the animals. And we find this today, we're living in times where people behave in a manner even worse than the animals itself. So remember the status Allah has given us as insan. Allah has created us in the most beautiful form. Not forgetting the reality of our existence. That one day we will become asfala safilin, the lowest of the low as well. That is our system, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created our life. And also not forgetting that our physical, likewise our spiritual side is important. We need not only to physically beautify ourselves, but spiritually we need to also beautify ourselves. Beautify the heart, beautify with ibadah, with akhlaq and knowledge, all of these things. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a tawfiq and understanding. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the reality of these two ayat. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept these moments from us. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Subhanallah, Muhammad, subhanallah.